for the group, as I was saying, it's kind of different on everyone's campus here. What you are doing, what you can do, what sports are back, what sports are hosting what. So real quickly, just kind of give us the lay of the land on your respective campus. What sports have returned for you? What are your expected live video deliverables, whether that's video board, live streaming, differences in digital social content that might need to support? What do you currently need to fulfill right now? Megan, we'll start with you.
So I'll start off. The only kind of sport that we have pretty much active in terms of competing is football. Mm-hmm. And we provide a live video board feed for the game. But we actually, with trying to bring in our ESPN Plus deal this year, it's a unique situation because we're supposed to broadcast 13 games on ESPN Plus, and so far we're not really having anything to broadcast. So we actually have a student crew that we're training, and they're the ones that are kind of running the video board this year. We're utilizing the time to train students on how to do it, since it's not a packed stadium. There's really not a lot of pressure on them to get quote unquote things right. So that's kind of taken the pressure off of my team a little bit in terms of having to run the video board. So we're actually adding a supplementary stream on the side to kind of fulfill a lot of our IMG kind of sponsorship side stuff. So we are doing a Facebook Live where we have a GoPro camera on our play-by-play and color commentary announcers. And we sold sponsorship through it all. We can kind of put our own stuff in there every once in a while, but basically it allows people to listen to them, especially given the fact that not everyone has access to some of the platforms that our team is playing on. And we fulfill a lot of sponsorship obligations with it as well. But then in terms of all of our other teams, everyone's pretty much back to training. Our women's soccer and volleyball program are treating the fall now as if it's their spring. So they're kind of going through quote unquote spring workouts and preparing for what will begin their season. Volleyball will start end of January, and women's soccer, I think, is going to kind of start up at sometime in March. So our spring is going to get a little crazy with everything but football pretty much competing. Men's and women's basketball are kind of training as the season is progressing. They're kind of in full swing. We've been doing a lot of content with them, kind of preparing for this upcoming season. As long as we're wearing our masks and stuff, it's obviously different. Every time we go through footage now, I don't know if anyone else is having this issue, but it's really hard sometimes to go through and locate the footage of making sure that players and coaches are wearing masks before you can post it. I know that's one of our big rules that we have internally. And a lot of that too is we're our urban campus. So because we're urban, we're a little bit more, we're a little bit bigger in terms of we can't separate ourselves from people very much. So with that, we're not having any fans except for immediate family at football games. And, right now we're still waiting to hear on what we can and can't do with basketball as well. But we're thinking basketball is going to be just immediate family as well, which kind of hurts the atmosphere a lot. But, we're doing the best we can to kind of supplement that with a lot of social content. And we'll probably do the secondary stream for basketball as well with the camera on Dan Horde.
Okay, really interesting. Yeah, we'll definitely get into some more deeper conversations on, what content you're creating and the student staffing. I love that from we've heard some of this from some of the NFL teams that we've talked to. I love it from a staffing perspective. You taking the advantage of the opportunity to get lower stress, but still highly valuable reps for people, especially either students or younger members of your staff, in positions that you probably wouldn't have put them in if, like you said, there were 70,000 people in the stand. So that's really a fantastic learning opportunity. I think that's really smart on your part. Eric, how's things in Blacksburg?
Things are going all right, as well as they can be. We actually just wrapped up our fall sports season this past weekend, including volleyball, men's and women's soccer, and mid-season football. We've done 12 broadcasts of fall sports. 7 of those were linear shows, and 5 of which is the new kind of ESPN model that we have with ESPN, where instead of sending people in to work with us, we are taking on producing and executing those linear shows, mostly in-house, like we do our digital shows. And then we've also been asked to produce football broadcasts this year too. So we've done 2 of those thus far. We have a 3rd one coming in a couple of weeks, second weekend of November. And so we're really happy to be able to still do those kind of things. And taking on football was a challenge, but things went pretty well for the most part on both of those shows. From a big screen standpoint, we're still putting on, a semblance of what we normally would do. The scope of that has changed a lot. It's gotten to be a more player-driven show, all the way down to music selection, specific player highlight videos, showing certain replays on the board that might help the coaches, as opposed to what can we do to entertain fans. Our state rules currently is 1,000-person capacity. And so for football, that essentially means players and coaches' families and whoever else can get on the pass list. And that has been the same for volleyball and men's and women's soccer too. So we've kind of embraced that opportunity to see how else we can cover a sport and different things we can work into our shows from that standpoint, from having no fans there to it sounding different, looking different, all those kind of things. Most of our in-game big screen features have worked their way over to social media. We're working with our licensing department and pushing every day to try to get more engagement on those pieces and get more sponsorship to hopefully reach more people and, like we're all trying to do, figure out how to make some more money.
Right. No, always can't lose sight of that, right? Tyler, how is things going in Ames? You guys support a lot of, you have a linear television network that you support, all these different things that you guys are doing for the Cyclones. So what are things looking like right now in Ames for you guys?
Yeah, this was going to be a big transition year, as it was for us. And then COVID came up, which made it even more interesting. So we onboarded ESPN Plus this year, which was a huge undertaking for us, because we somehow, after 4 months of back and forth, built a second control room during this process. I don't know if anybody else here has had to go through that, but it was an absolute good. It was a nightmare, from budgets to integrators to just, you're constantly chasing a moving target and being on the phone with administration and the ESPN folks, and we somehow got it done. But just to kind of give a high level of what we're doing. So we're currently doing football. With football, I'll give our league credit. The testing protocols, the thing they put out of the gate, our coaches and administration, everybody's bought into it. We've had 0 issues from when we started camp to now. So I made my first road trip with football this weekend on the plane, and they had it down to a science. So I'll applaud them. But we kind of had a weird situation where we were going to go half capacity. So state of Iowa was going to go half capacity because a lot of restaurants and whatnot were half capacity, and that was the stance you're going to take. And then we kind of had that changed on a dime right after we made the announcement. 2 days later, our president and AD kind of weighed in on some things, and we ended up going to no fans our first game. So we went from planning everything at half capacity to having in 2 weeks flip the script and basically have no fans. So a lot changed in venue with some of our preparation. And then after game 1, they were using it as a test for, because it was player guests and families and whatnot. And if that went well, then we were going to be allowed to bring in fans. So now we're at, I think, 14,000 and change. So our poor ticket office had to go through a pretty bad stretch of seating half the stadium to then seating 14,000, but we somehow got it done. So we're also doing a second screen show. We kind of had a lot of time this summer to think about it. It's on YouTube and our platform on what we have at Cyclones.tv, which was what we did before ESPN Plus, which is we've got a local access channel in the state of Iowa and surrounding states that's in 500,000 homes. So we put that on that interface, and then also on YouTube. Integrate some social media and some tag board elements, and some in-venue things. We had a host for game 1 because we had no fans. And then once we put fans in, we kind of scaled things back because we had to throw a lot more resources to in-venue. Soccer, we've done 3 games on ESPN Plus. We did not do our first game because our control room wasn't ready. So we had once it was done and commissioned, we scrambled our whole staff to try and learn and train and do all the different things with Ross and with our dream catcher and everything that is new to everyone. With volleyball, we're gonna do 7 games. We've done 4 already, I believe. So we're contractually obligated to do 50 with our ESPN Plus arrangement. So we just got basketball schedules yesterday. So now we're trying to work through some of those things. So we're, like everybody, constantly chasing a moving target, but we're excited that we're doing fall sports. So
right, I know it's been stressful, but don't want to lose sight of the of wishing you congratulations on the new control room. I'm sure it's brought a lot of stress in your life, but it's also cool. It's something worth celebrating, right?
Yep.
Real quickly before we get to the next question, Imri had one. I think it was directed towards you, Megan, with the secondary streams of the commentators. How has viewership been on that?
So viewership it ironically kind of coincides with what platform our team is playing on. Our ESPN Plus commitment doesn't really fully integrate for another 2 years. So that's why, I know Tyler was just saying, they have to do 50 events. This year, we were only told to do 13. And part of that is because we need a slower integration based on budgets and money and equipment that are involved. So our first football game was on ESPN Plus, and our fans don't want to pay for it yet. So they just haven't gotten on board yet. And part of that is just because our stuff isn't fully on the platform yet. Mm-hmm. So our secondary stream numbers were huge for the first game. Then the second game, we were on ESPN, the main station, and we had maybe 15 people, 20 people tune in because everyone was able to watch the game. And then the following week, we were on ESPN Plus again, and our numbers skyrocketed. So we haven't had a home game in 3 weeks or 4 weeks now. So we'll find out, I guess, what our numbers are again this weekend, but we're again on the ESPN main platform. So, but we've had a lot of people that I guess have said, oh, well, I'd rather listen to Dan and Jim than the play-by-play on TV. So there's some people who are doing a dual where they have their TV audio off and are listening to Dan and Jim while watching the game. So it'll be interesting to see what our numbers are this weekend, but it does coincide a lot with what channel our team is playing on.
Gotcha. Okay, great. You all touched on it a little bit, and I'd like to talk about content before we get into the annoying logistical protocols and all that kinds of stuff, because it seems like we always start with the COVID logistics. Well, let's start with content because that's more fun. Eric, you talked a little bit about what the game day video board looks like for you guys. Greater emphasis on replays, music, more a playlist built more for specific player tastes, as opposed to entertaining, the masses of a $70,000 or $80,000 or 80,000 seat capacity stadium, whatever it may be. Can you give a little insight into how your content is different, and are there any things that you're trying that you have found beneficial that maybe people in the audience would be like, oh, when I get a video board, maybe a video board show back, maybe I should try that.
So it's interesting because we kind of have separated a little bit in our department. So we've got network people, we've got big screen creative people. It's a little sensitive to those guys because the big screens department concedes that the kind of priority is on the TV broadcast and the creative element that you can put on social media to give people access to your programs.
Sure.
Student athletes that can't be there. So to their credit, they've done a really great job of kind of embracing that and trying to play on all of that. So in addition to things like music selections and how they choose their replays, they've taken some more risks, because if 500 people see it and don't like it, that's a lot better than 65,000. So they've done things. They have a fan cam devoted specifically to cardboard cutouts.
Nice.
They have a mask cam where they put a mask overlay on top of people that maybe aren't wearing one at the time in the stands. They've got they put a ruler on the bottom of the screen as a social distancing cam for 6 feet, and they use that to maybe troll some visiting fans that aren't adhering to the rules that they're supposed to be inside the stadium. So there's things like that they're doing, and then, like I said, you're pushing all of the in-game features to social media to try to get more engagement and more licensing opportunities from that perspective, because they'll get more viewership from Twitter and Facebook than they will inside the actual stadium. So.
Okay. And did you go, and it could have been just for the music, or it could have gone beyond. Did you or your department or the big screens department go directly to the coaching staff, the players? How did you poll the players to see like what they might like?
So we do this thing in our external department here called Squad. and every sport has their own squad made up of people from every external department representatives, and they all kind of work together towards the common goal of providing the best possible service and product to every sport throughout the season. And so that's how a lot of those conversations and ideas happen, is through those meetings throughout the year and talking to our ops directors and people kind of embedded on the teams to kind of figure out how can we make this work and still provide a good atmosphere and give some energy to the teams that are playing.
Okay. Tyler, how about for you? If you've got a hybrid where you've got, kind of a percentage of fans that maybe you can have in there, are you having to thread that needle a little more finely between giving the players maybe a better experience than they normally would, but you've also got some fans in the stands? How are you kind of juggling both balls, I guess?
Yeah, it's been, we discussed a lot of it in the beginning, and it was hard to really chase a direction when you're chasing all directions. So where it ended up landing was more of how our head football coach and the staff has treated all this, and they wanted things to be as normal as possible. So we really didn't make a whole lot of changes to what we did as far as in venue. The biggest issue we had with game one was thinking we were 50,000 fans and then went to 0. So there was some piping and some crowd noise and some things that we tried that worked well in some situations and then didn't in some situations. So we learned some things as a staff, and have made those adjustments. And our fans are great and they're loud. So now that we actually have fans, I wouldn't say it's like having 65,000, but it's, they'll bring it if we're playing well, and they always like we're playing. They'll bring it. And as far as what we've done on the board, no, not a lot of different things. Utilizing tag board more for bringing home gating and things for people that can't be there. And then from a sponsorship perspective, a lot of the on-field presentations and reads that we normally would do on the field, we've just run a wireless cam up our ramp, and those people are not even close. It's almost like we're outside the stadium when we do those. But you can still see it in the background, and we're able to do kind of all of those on-field things in a way that is not obtrusive to those that are on the field. So.
Cool. And Megan, how about at Nippert?
It's kind of the same as Tyler. Okay. We didn't really change a lot of what we did or how we were going to kind of control our video board show. Kind of the only difference is we are piping in some crowd noise, but our cheer and band are actually pretty loud. So you still kind of get that college feel of being there. You just, the stadium's just not shaking like it normally does when people are yelling. And then, we pretty much took away any on-field or in-game recognitions. They're just graphics now that we put up on the board with a PA read. But basically, our run of show is pretty much exactly the same as it would have been if we had a full capacity. And part of that is because we do have students that are now training on it. We're trying to give them the most realistic experience, trying to show the game on the video board.
Okay, cool. Or just a reminder to everyone in the audience, if you have any questions, feel free to shoot them into the Q&A function. I was able to see Imri, so that worked pretty easily. Moving on to staffing and students. Eric, I'd like to start with you on this one because you have a really fantastic student program. So I'd love to know how you have handled the challenge of recruiting and training new students. Have you been able to do that, or are you relying a lot on maybe some of the roster that you had already? How is that going for you, and how are you handling training? And also, is student safety different than if you're working with any freelancers or anything like that?
So it's we were told, hey, we need you guys to be able to still produce all these games at a high level because there's a lot riding on it. But we also need you to limit your interactivity with students and make an effort to cut back on costs, which for us, we are heavily student-driven department, so it's not incredibly realistic. Fortunately, we did a good job the last year or so building up some depth with our student workers and a good core group of people that we've relied on heavily in the fall. So we always are battling, turnover and things like that. So we had about 20 new students that we were going to bring on in the fall. And we had to make the decision to tell them that, hey, you can do things with us virtually, training, feed, review sessions, anything like that through Zoom and Google Drives and those kinds of things in the fall. And then we'll bring everybody in the spring and get more hands-on training experience. So that's what we decided to do in August. I don't know that things are going to look all that different in January, just given how things are going. So, fortunately, we've been able to rely heavily on our most experienced students. That has helped get us through these fall shows, and that's worked really well. And so we're kind of hoping to use that same model for our winter sports coming up. So, but to answer your question a little bit more directly, no, we haven't been able to have a lot of that one-on-one and especially group training time in our control room. So we've done a lot virtually through through Zoom calls to cover how to cover sports, through PowerPoint slides, through designing training manuals for philosophies and everything on equipment and positions, to shooting training videos for all of our equipment, that they can at least see something and have an idea of what they're supposed to do. And then we build in some extra time in our production schedules for our shows to rehearse things more frequently. I mean, just try to run through situations so that they can kind of feel comfortable before we start a show. So that's kind of how we've been able to navigate it so far.
Tyler, for you, like you mentioned, you had the added layer of an entire new facility. So you're trying to recruit students, you got student staff, you've got a whole new room that you got to train them up in. How did you possibly do that?
Yeah, it was kind of a mess because honestly, in a normal year, we were looking to increase our hourly budget for everything from freelancer students by probably 33 to 40%. And now all of our full-time staff took 10% pay cuts for the year. And then we're also had our budget slashed by 20%. So our issue has been we don't have a huge student workforce. We're working with our journalism school to try and make that better. We had done some things, or we're going to do some things in the spring around softball and basically use that whole entire sport as a training ground for everything that we were going to do this fall. And that obviously hit the skids when we didn't have a softball season, kind of when COVID, everything blew up after the basketball tournament. So we've had to go back to using the same old freelancers, which is great because they do a great job, but I've got my eyes set on spring, and I've got some concerns that as we continue to load up heavily on freelancers and we can't get our student operation going in the direction I want, that these fall sports they're going to end up playing in the spring, kind of almost like a double schedule, we could be in some budget issues potentially. So we're kind of just trying to keep that in mind. We probably brought on, I want to say maybe 10 to 12 students during this process, but it's just trying to carve out time to train them when we're trying to learn some of the new stuff ourselves. So we're certainly getting there. It's hard to bring in extra students to do training and whatnot in a control room when you're trying to follow social distancing and mitigation things. And so it's kind of like what Eric said, you're trying to carve out time to, if you have time to do one-on-one stuff in production meetings, we can, but it's hard to do it in larger groups, obviously. So
yeah, totally, man, that's gotta be rough. Megan, real quickly, how are you doing anything that these guys haven't mentioned in regards to recruiting or training students?
Other than at the beginning, we broke a lot of rules. We did. My boss, Dan, I kind of, not that he didn't care, but he was like, oh yeah, we're going to start this whole intern collaborative, and we're going to bring them into the office and have office hours. And I'm like, can we? I was like, I don't think we're allowed to. I was like, so at one point, I guess he had like 3 or 4 interns in here, because I mean that's the only way to train them one-on-one. And they do a lot of creative graphic work for us along with video, and he got in trouble. So we're back to the whole, all right, we're meeting on Zoom with these students, and I feel bad because a lot of these students who are like, well, when can we come and film stuff? I want to come and like film stuff. And right now, I mean, I'm still trying to get approval for myself to go film things. So, a lot of times it's me handing the footage off, which doesn't help them as much because they're not getting the valuable experience of filming. I keep telling them, hopefully in the spring, maybe for more of the outdoor sports, I'm sure you guys are all in the same boat. We haven't really heard what our protocol is going to be for basketball, how many people we can have filming, covering it, working, all that stuff. So, yeah, so other than us breaking a few of the rules at the beginning and bringing interns in person, a lot of it is just kind of figuring it all out still.
Okay. A couple of questions coming in from the audience, especially focused around audio. Megan, thanks for getting into the specifics in there for Lucas from Illinois State about some of your remote announcers that you might have had. You mentioned that your radio crew called the road game at SMU remotely. Is that correct?
Yeah. So, and that was a last minute decision.
Okay.
And again, I think we broke some rules doing what we did. When we were setting up on Friday, Bill Friggy, who's kind of like our engineer, technical guy here, even said, he goes, they think what we're doing is a little not legal, but it was the only way for us to figure out how to get the game feed from SMU. Basically, we sent an Aja Hilo box down with our communications director for football. And again, a lot of our decisions that are being made in terms of, travel, who's going where, credentials and all that is coming kind of from the top, just because we're an urban campus. Again, like we're not separated from a lot of people, and because we're urban, we're around more people. So they kind of made the call to not send our radio crew. And so then they had to like kind of scratch last minute. Well, they were trying to figure out how to feed video that wasn't the TV feed, because obviously you can't always rely on the TV feed. They go to commercial breaks, all that stuff. And so they did like this whole setup where they kind of went behind the scenes and brought in SMU's video board feed for them to kind of watch what was being fed live from the stadium. And then they set up in Fifth Third Arena. It's actually the same audio setup that FC Cincinnati was doing, since they do all their kind of play-by-play calling remotely as well, Tommy G, and I can't remember who his counterpart is, but they would do everything remotely in Nippert. But a couple of the games we had conflicts with football, so the press box was taken, so they would set up in Fifth Third Arena as well. And basically they set up like a normal show. They just have multiple different monitors with multiple views of the game, so that they could, kind of call it as best as they can.
Okay. Eric, Tyler, either of you guys have had to do anything like that, supporting remote commentary at all?
We're headed that direction with basketball, I think.
Okay.
I think it depends on the school and if they can drive it or not. But I was on some email threads here Monday with Learfield, our schools and our leagues, because I know our radio crew won't be traveling, and that's kind of due to plane size and a few other things. So we're obviously looking for low latency ways to hand off things, and hoping that our league and school standardize it so it's not the same. Our radio crew's not walking into something different for every road game where they're having to do these remotely. So I'm just scratching the surface of what this is going to get, but it's certainly that is going to be a big project here in the next few weeks, probably. So
for us, we haven't dove into that really in depth. This past weekend was the first time we did it when we played Wake. Fortunately, they're also a Learfield school, so they were able to send an effects feed straight to our guys calling it remotely from our football booth here in our stadium. And then we found it super helpful to work with the video staff at Wake, and they were able to send us a program feed that they were getting from the production truck on site, as well as an all 22 through a Zoom feed. And that's how, and they put that on a huge monitor in front of them in the booth. And that's how they were able to call the game and everything be synced up with as little bit of a delay as possible. So I'm hoping that we can kind of keep that kind of same workflow, just school to school, depending on how it goes throughout the year.
Okay. All right. Great. All right. We've only got about 10 minutes left or so. So I want to get in with you three about maybe throughout all this, and maybe you've mentioned some of these things along the way, but in all of these stress of getting these broadcasts on under very unique circumstances, is there anything special that has helped you along the way? A service, a solution, a tool, a resource, something that's proven really, really valuable in either preparing for or actually executing a live sports production in this environment? Maybe there's something that someone in the audience can benefit from, something that's really come up clutch for you guys. Eric, why don't we start with you if you got anything?
Ours is really, really simple, and it's not technical at all. So when we came up with all of our policies and everything for this year, we decided, hey, we think it's a good idea to have a group of 2 to 3 people for every show, our more versatile kids that are on call to work in case anything happens, in case somebody comes up sick the day of or the night before or whatever. And honestly, of the 12 shows that we've done this fall, I think we've had to use that list on more than half of them.
Wow.
And that has really saved us to be able to put people in critical leadership roles in our control room, to be able to still pull off a broadcast kind of at the last minute if something doesn't go right, or somebody, turns up sick or doesn't pass screening when they get there. So I would say that was really, really helpful.
Interesting. Tyler, how about for you?
Oh boy, that's a tough one. I mean, a lot of the stuff we have is so new, and control room wise. But I think the one thing for us to understand, and I think it kind of hit home for our administration, is that, and I don't want to have this come off bad, but football drives the ship here. And I think that it's a read the room type mentality for everyone involved, and from every sport, for every employee. You know, our AD was out ahead of this, and we had all kinds. He kept us updated and was transparent through the entire process from when this started. And so it was just trying to chart a plan as a group and just understand that don't expect the level of service that you were used to getting in some things as sports that come back online. And I think for the most part, everybody's kind of had that in the back of their mind as we move forward. So that's not something that I can say that I did. We kind of just followed direction from leadership, because I'm really, really proud of our leaders and how we've handled to get to this point.
Okay, great. Megan, how about you? Anything that's a tool, service, solution, something that's helped you along the way get through all this?
Yeah. I mean, we haven't had too many live event productions, obviously. We've only had like 3 football games, and other than Facebook Live, we're not really streaming anything too much. But for like our coaches to do I guess Zoom has kind of become our main use for being able to meet with the press, with the media, and like being able to kind of still put everyone where coach can see them and they can see coach, but still kind of get that one-on-one ability. So Zoom, I guess, has been like a really good platform for us. But then like our social strategy leader, Spencer Tuckerman, has been using OBX a lot, to be able to kind of get those videos out on multiple different platforms at once, between Facebook and Twitter and Sidearm, possibly YouTube. And he plugs everything in and gets it out, and does it live via a Zoom link. For us, a great example is our medical staff has been very, 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 very strict about who is where and who's doing what. And part of that is 2 of our head team doctors kind of work on the board in the city of Cincinnati for the COVID-related incidences, because UC Health is so huge here, and they get more information than I think most normal doctors do in terms of strategy and whatnot. So our post-game press conferences for football with coach and the players has been all virtual. They don't even want me in there. I can't film it. So they set up a computer, and we pretty much take that Zoom link and we're able to stream it out live, and then it automatically archives to YouTube. So I just found out about Zoom this year, thanks to COVID. And I think Zoom has been kind of our saving grace in terms of just being able to connect video wise still. And having that record option in Zoom too is great as well. We're able to get interviews and archive them and all that.
Yeah, it's become so ingrained in all of our lives that I think it's easy to forget that, just how much it's radically changed everything and how much it's helped us get there. I remember, just anecdotally for us, we tried to start having some of our big advisory board meetings at SVG, starting doing them in video chat back in September of 2019. And I'd be like, it'd be great if everyone could see each other's faces. And I feel like it would be more networking, and like, no one came on with their cameras. And I guess it was just maybe 4 or 5 months too early, but it was like, and now it's like a complete 180. It's like, it's so wild how people are just like, have been forced into it. And now it's just a part of everyone's lives. All right, real quickly, last question for you. And I'll keep an eye on, certainly in the audience, if you have anything. We certainly have a couple minutes here that we can squeeze something in. But we have a decent amount of people in the audience who are from smaller schools that maybe not have returned yet, or will be returning either in the coming week or in the coming month, in terms of, be it a basketball or something like that. For someone who hasn't returned yet, what's your advice for what they could be doing right now to prepare themselves and their team for the day that they are going to have to spring back into action and support, if it's an in-stadium video board show for an empty basketball arena, or it's a live stream of a women's soccer game, what can they be doing right now if they haven't sprung back into action yet that will set them up for success when that time does come? Maybe Megan, we'll start with you on that one.
Recruiting student help. And I know that's difficult, especially given social distancing and guidelines and whatnot. But we're kind of in the same boat. Right now we're kind of active, but we still don't know how we're going to get through the spring. So we're trying to build up our student help right now so that we can have them best prepared come January or February. We're kind of leaning more towards juniors and seniors, upperclassmen who might have more camera experience than freshmen and sophomores, partially because they won't be as heavy on the training, essentially, so to say. It's hard because I don't even know how to give the best answer for this, because I don't think we're prepared, and we're going into everything. We're not. I mean, it's tough because we don't have schedules. We don't have what our protocols are for indoor events versus outdoor events, who's allowed where. We're kind of we're going week by week at this point. So, but my biggest suggestion is, and one thing that we're working on heavily right now, and we're slowly building it, is having an intern pool, just so that you have backup help and students that you can rely on. Because if you get to know them now, the easier it'll be come January, February, March to be able to say, hey, like, I need you to go cover this event for us while I'm at this other event.
Right. Eric, how about you? If you were not playing right now, but you knew you would be in the coming weeks, what would you be doing?
What would I be doing right now? It's pretty warm here. I'd be playing more golf.
There you go. Playing golf, crying in a pillow, and spending time with family, right?
The biggest thing I would say is, our schedule changed. Scott's on this call still, I think. It's changed probably 6 times from July to August 15th. So just be flexible, be relatable to people. There's a lot of things going on right now outside of sports that are way more important and critical to everything going on. And so you never know what they're kind of dealing with, and everybody's frustrated by it and doesn't know how to exactly navigate everything. So once you have a plan, great, write it down. Don't fall in love with it because it's probably going to change. And then brainstorm every conceivable replacement for that plan. What happens if my play-by-play guy gets COVID and I find out a day before a show? What happens if they say I can only have 3 cameras instead of 6? Where do we place them? How do those assignments change? We can't do interviews anymore. So how else do we kind of fill that time and provide some kind of that behind-the-scenes content? Where else can we put mics? For soccer, we run a mic behind on the opposite side of our cameras where the benches are, in between the benches, and we point them at the coaches, and we kind of ride that as they yell at people all throughout the game. And it's great behind the scenes stuff. And if an F-bomb slips in there, so be it. At least people are talking about it. So those kind of things there, just kind of planning all different kind of contingencies for whatever they may tell you as you move throughout the season. So that really helped us. And so hopefully it would help you too.
Yeah, this has always been an industry at collegiate, pro level, whatever it is, that's thrived off of having redundancies and backup plans. But I feel more so than ever, it's like you have literally a whole binders full of backup plans that you either will never have to use or you hope you never have to use, and that's just part of the job now at this point, right? Tyler, how about for you?
Yeah, Eric kind of stole mine because we were thinking along the same lines of don't take yourself too seriously, because there's a lot of moving parts with this, but but every plan goes a different direction. But for us, a big thing, and we're still not utilizing them the way we should, is just POV cams. Those cheap Marshall POV cams. We're finding new ways and new places to put them, and wish we had more of them. And especially with football and doing some second screen things, it's where can we put a camera that might be something interesting that either we can use for something or even TV could use for something, because they're trying to figure things out, and as well as they do broadcasts, the more things we can help them with. So certainly scratching the surface with it, but I think we've learned a lot in the power of what those things can do if you have time to think through where you can put them. So.
All right. Well, I know this has been a very stressful time. It's probably required you to do parts of the job a whole lot more that maybe necessarily aren't everyone's favorite parts of the job necessarily, but really give 3 of you a lot of credit for doing some fantastic work, keeping your athletic departments up and running, keeping your fans engaged, keeping your student athletes and your coaching staffs as happy as possible. We really appreciate you also sharing your knowledge for those of us who are in the audience here as well, because if there are a bunch of them who haven't been able to come back yet, hopefully they've got some, a notebook page full of takeaways that will help them when they get back to action as well. So Megan, Eric, Tyler, thank you so much for being here and for doing this with us.
No problem.
Thanks, Brandon.